The more people this guy kills on the screen, the more money we make.
You would take me out of school early to a movie set.
Don't tell your mother. I'm watching you with your butt sticking out, then I see the weenie. This is crazy. The weenie. Everyone that is watching this should know that you wanted me to wear a T-shirt today or a hat or something that has my picture and my name on it.
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, you called me this morning asking what I was going to wear, and I told you a suit, and then you said, oh, fuck. And so I assumed you were going to wear what you wear pretty much every day, which is a T-shirt with your own face on it, with a jacket with your pose, and then a hat that says Arnold, and then glasses that say, I'll be back.
I was called yesterday by my chief of staff and said, Patrick called and said, it's absolutely essential that you wear tomorrow a T-shirt with your name and your picture on it. And
I thought about
so Patrick just wants to make fun of me because, okay, I wore at Gold's Gym the other day a FUBA T-shirt.
Yeah.
Why? Because FUBA is coming out on Father's Day.
Yes.
See how I put the promotion into it?
Yes.
Learn from that, okay? This
You're
is very
good at
important,
that, I know.
Okay? Exactly. Anyway, I'll be back in around 2 hours or so, depending on traffic. I'll be back. And so therefore, FUBA is coming out on Father's Day. And so I said to myself, of course I wear a T-shirt with the FUBA logo on it, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, that is a natural. So, but this doesn't mean I have to come here with a T-shirt with my picture on it so you can make fun of me.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't, but I think you're the only person I know that can wear head-to-toe photos of themselves. If I did that and called it promotion, people would think I'm insane.
Well, then maybe think of me that way too.
That's
it
true.
Doesn't matter.
That's true.
As long as we get the thing at the point across. But all kidding aside, it is an absolute pleasure for me to sit here today and to have this discussion with you. Because a year ago, this would have never happened.
Yep.
Variety would have never asked us to sit here and have this discussion. But now you came out with White Lotus. Mm-hmm. You went through the roof. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm now a big fan of White Lotus. It's a fantastic show. And your acting surprised the hell out of me. Not that I didn't know that you're good, because you've shown that in the last 10 years, but it was just unbelievable, the kind of stuff that you did in the show, and that things that I didn't recognize you.
Right.
Certain behaviors, because as son, I know every little kind of thing that you have, facial expressions and all that, but in this one, I was really blown away.
I don't have any interests. I don't have any hobbies. Okay, if I'm not a success, then I'm nothing. And I can't handle being nothing.
So my question is just, how do you feel about this great, great success now?
Well, thank you. I think that Variety probably wouldn't have asked me a year ago, but they probably would have asked you. I feel like this is a surreal moment for me because, I mean, as much as we get to hang out or talk or something like that, we would never have a 45-minute conversation about acting, and kind of the background of where you started, where I got to start, and where we are today. So I think this is a really great opportunity and kind of a cool moment. But for me, this has been like a whirlwind of a 2 months of like the show coming out. I mean, it's been a whirlwind of a year and a half from the time that I actually auditioned until I booked the show, and then we filmed it to actually coming out, and then the show comes out over 8 weeks, and to watch the progression of like the interest from people and the fandom and people like getting excited about the show over those 8 weeks has been a really kind of wild journey for me. But I think one of the best parts about being on the show is that the amount of people that get to recognize your work, because for so long I've done so many shows that not so many people have seen. I mean, people have seen.
Oh, I know. But I mean, now everyone is coming up to me in the gym.
Yeah.
And they're saying, I mean, your son is fantastic.
Yeah.
Then someone else comes up to me and says, oh, now I hated your son in the series.
I know, that was the weird part, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I said, you hated him? I said, what kind of a compliment is that? And they said, no, I mean, he was fantastic.
Yeah.
But the character that he played, and he played it so believable and all that stuff. So the amount of compliments that I've been getting about you it's just extraordinary. And so this is why I was wondering what it is like for you now walking around the street, because it's really literally happened from one moment to the next.
Yeah.
Bang.
Yeah.
You know, you went on this promotion tour, and then all of a sudden everyone in the whole world, in Austria, in France, in England, I get, emails from all over. They're reading the stories about you, they're seeing the show, they love the show. And all. What does that feel like, that all of a sudden people must think that you just arrived?
Yeah.
In the meantime, you've been, I know, struggling and working very hard for the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's been a kind of a weird experience for me, I guess, is the easiest way, because it is like from one day to the next, all of a sudden you're kind of, I don't know, known or something, and it's, the show is so weird because it's this kind of whodunit murder mystery. You have people coming up to you every day telling you their theories of who dies, and they want to know these answers, and they want to come up to you. And then the weirdest thing, like I said, and kind of the biggest learning experience for me, is how much people associate you with your character. For me, it was like people came up to me and like you said, told me how much they hated me, in the beginning, the first weeks, how much they hated my character and how bad I was and how much of a douche I was and how mean I was and all these things. And then by the end of it, they came up to me saying how much they felt bad for me, and the stuff with me and my brother on the boat and all these. Then they came up and they're like, I just can't believe you would do that. And so it was just like a roller coaster of emotions for me, but also just of an experience of people feeling like they knew me.
I forgot of how you got exposed to White Lotus. I mean, did the director call you from one day to the next? Did you have to do a reading?
I did an audition. This was right after the writer's strike. The first audition I did is very unique. They give you one sentence about the character. So my character was Saxon Ratliff. He works for his father in finance, and he's an absolute flirt. That was it. And then there was no scripts. There was no other background information. And they give you a couple scenes to do. And then I think they do it that way so you can kind of put your own interpretation on the self-tape or on the role. And so I did that. And usually with self-tapes, like, I'll wait a couple days, or I'll do it and you don't hear back for weeks or months or never at all. And this one was like, I did the self-tape, and within 24 hours, I got the call saying they loved it. They want to do a director's read and a chemistry read. Do you remember when I did the director's read was when we were in Sun Valley the day after Christmas?
Yes.
I was upstairs when Christopher was helping me. I didn't go skiing that day, which you were not happy about. And that's when I did the final read with Mike White, Dave Bernad, and Meredith Tucker, the casting director, and all the people from the team. And then about a week later is when I actually booked it and got the role.
I read, this was in Austria.
Yeah.
In a magazine, they had a big cover story on you and about the success and how great you are and all this. And one of the quotes that I read was how it is sometimes, or how it was difficult to get through this because you have the name Schwarzenegger.
Mm-hmm.
So explain that to me, because I didn't understand it, because to me, the name Schwarzenegger always meant a big plus.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you were talking about that it can also be, a kind of an obstacle.
Yeah.
So explain that.
I mean, from my side, I feel it in multiple different ways, but I guess Mike White said it comes with baggage, is what he said. Not meaning just, our last name, Schwarzenegger, but I think this idea of when you have successful parents like I do with you and with Mom, or anybody else out there that's trying to be an actor that's kind of in those shoes, there's an added level of I think what other people think. And I think Mike was worried about, if he casted me, what other people would think, which they did. They did care about that. People said, oh, I got the role just because of you or for Mom or whatever that is. And I think Mike was a little bit kind of apprehensive at first about that. There were times earlier in my career where I was wondering, does it make sense to go under some sort of alias? Does it make sense to go under a different name? Do I just use Schwarzenegger? Does that add to comparison? Does that, whatever? And ultimately, what you've done with your last name and what you've built is incredible. It took a while for me to get to a point where I was less worried about like comparison and living in your shadow versus me just wanting to carve my own path and wanting to do it the way that I thought I should do it, and kind of taking the baby steps and slowly growing my career over the 10 years. And then, you have a project like this that just kind of
right.
makes it boom. Or
well,
something.
I'm glad that you kept the name. Because now I can take credit. Yeah, my son, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You know, those kind of lines that I'm using now.
Yeah.
But you basically now joined this short list of people that, of actors in Hollywood, you know, that had famous parents. If it is Jamie Lee Curtis, you know, with Tony Curtis, Janet Leigh being her mother, and
There's a bunch. I mean,
Michael Douglas, you know, who I've worked with, and you know, and I've worked with his father, with Kirk Douglas in The Villain.
Yeah.
There's a whole list of people. I mean, Jeff Bridges I worked with, and there was, of course, you know, his famous father and doing the TV series and all of that stuff. So the list goes on and on and on, and all of them benefited. And also, of course, had to show that they had talent. I mean, as you know, Jamie Lee Curtis, I mean, I think she's one of the greatest actors in the history of the women. I mean, she's just fantastic. And so all these others, Robert Downey Jr., I've seen him on the show, that he did this show, as a matter of fact. And, you know, he comes from a family of movie people and stuff like that. So I think that if you show that you have the substance, you can get rid of this whole idea of nepotism and just show that you have the substance. And I think that everyone recognizes that now.
Yeah. And I think one of the learning experiences for me was with doing all this press was like, you do a 45-minute interview or something and you talk about that, and then they just take the one sentence snippet from that, you know?
You think the press does that? Come on.
Which was a learning experience for me, because of course I understand that, you know, you guys have given me I mean, you know, how hard you've worked throughout your life, and Mom, to give the life that I have, and the opportunities that I've had, and being able to go to you know, college and to study business and film, and to be in acting class and theater school for the past 10, 15 years, and you know, the ability to meet a manager or to have an agent or all these different things. You know, I totally understand, you know, the life that you guys have given me. But you're always such a big, I mean, one of the biggest advices that you always give us kids is to work hard. And I feel like I've tried to honor that by working as hard as I can in whether it's classes or school or doing other things to try to better myself as an actor and as a human. But that's always been my focus, is just trying to become the best that I can at that, which is something that you've taught us. But I want to just take a step back, because you asked me about my audition, and then I just randomly was curious, when is the last time you auditioned? If ever. Have you ever auditioned?
Yes, one time.
God. The life.
One time for Lucille Ball. She called me at Gold's Gym. She said, "I'm sorry I'm interrupting your workout, but I saw you yesterday on the Merv Griffin show," which was a famous talk show.
Yeah.
And I was on it to promote the Mr. International competition that we were promoting here in Los Angeles. She says, "You were really funny. We were laughing in our house, and you were just great. I want you to come in and do this show with me, a 2-hour show, Happy Anniversary and Goodbye." With Art Carney, who just won the Academy Award for Best Actor and all that. And I said, okay. So I go in there, and she says, "I would like you to read with us."
Yeah.
And so she gave me the script.
Right there.
Right there.
Wow.
So I, of course, had no idea what reading was all about for a movie. So I took the script, and she says, "Okay, your character is Santa, and just, you know, say your lines." And so I said, "Okay. My name is Joe Sandow, and I am Italian. And in Italy, you know, I was a truck driver." And she says, "Okay, hold it. Give me the script again."
Yeah.
So she took the script, and she says, "Now, remember, you're a truck driver, you became a masseur."
Yeah. Oh, I've seen this. This is when you walk in with
That's right, exactly,
yes, of course.
So you come to my house and blah, blah, blah. So she says, "Okay, now let's talk." He says, "So who are you?" I say, I'm Santa. I said, "I'm a truck driver from Italy." "But you said you're a masseur." In Italy, everyone is a masseur. Every man is a masseur."
Yeah.
You know, and she says, they all were laughing. "Okay, you got the job."
Okay. So and that was your last audition?
That was it.
Oh, my
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God.
I get so, auditions are like...
Oh, I know. But I mean, just remember now, you know, I did her show, and it was a great success.
Yeah.
And then Barbara Rafelson hired me. And that was somewhat of an audition, because he said to me, he says, you got the part.
Yeah.
But you got to go to Eric Morris and study acting.
Yeah.
And then come back and read for me.
Oh, so they told you to go to classes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was not kind of like, really an audition. So anyway, I went after half a year, I went back to his office, and this was 1975, and I read for him, and then he did this big drama.
Yeah.
He says, oh my God, my hair is standing up on my forearm. He says, look at this. He says, I mean, it was so effective the way you said this, Arnold.
Yeah.
The emotions and everything. I mean, I totally bought it. You got the job. I mean, it's no problem. I mean, I'm so happy to have you to Stay Hungry for Me with Jeff Bridges and
Right,
Sally
right.
Fields.
Right.
That was it.
Wow.
So from then on, the Streets of San Francisco job, I got because of those jobs. And then, of course, Jane Mansfield, in the Jane Mansfield story,
Right.
to play Mickey Haggerty, the Mr. Universe. And then to get Conan the Barbarian was because of Pumping Iron. And so all of the stuff that started happening, there was no audition anymore.
And then when did you get, at what point was Terminator?
Terminator was a huge breakthrough.
Yeah.
Because I was doing the Conan movies.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what was my dream when I was a kid. Unlike you wanted to get into acting because of acting.
Right.
I wanted to get into it because I saw on a big screen Hercules.
Right.
So it was Reg Park and Steve Reeves, they played Hercules.
Right.
And so I said to myself, I want to be one of those guys. So I started training, and then I said to myself, okay, when I become Mr. Universe, just like Reg Park and Steve Reeves, I will be getting into movies because of my fame of being Mr. Universe.
Right.
Of course, things have changed then after that and all this. And so I kind of like had this vision after I was through with my bodybuilding career that I'm going to get into movies, only to find out that now it's the 70s and they were not looking anymore for the muscle guys.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get in it through the muscles.
Right.
And then eventually I did, because all of the parts that I played, if it was with Happy Anniversary and Goodbye and all of those kind of things, and Stay Hungry, Pumping Iron, the Jane Mansfield story, all of this had to do with muscles.
Yeah.
Including then Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah.
So Terminator, to get back to Terminator, what you're talking about is, Terminator was the first time that I was not doing a film that had nothing to do really with the muscles.
Yeah.
It was more with leather jackets on and
Yeah,
clothes
yeah.
and
Part of it, but
playing
yeah.
a machine. Only the opening scene was naked.
Yeah.
But talking about naked,
I've done it.
I couldn't believe. I said to myself, I'm watching your show and I'm watching you with your butt sticking out there. And all of a sudden I see the weenie. And I said to myself, what is going on here? I mean, this is crazy. And then I said to myself, well, Arnold, hello.
the weenie.
You did the same thing in Conan and in Terminator and all of those films.
Genius.
You were naked, so don't complain about it. But it was kind of like a shock to me that you would follow my footsteps that closely.
Oh, yeah.
But in any case, the bottom line was Terminator was kind of a breakthrough that now people started paying attention to me and getting me parts that had nothing to do with muscles.
Right.
I did Commander and I did Predator and I did all of this other, Running Man, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah, so Terminator was your big, Conan was a big break, but Terminator was the...
Was another big break. Conan was a big breakthrough internationally. Terminator was a big breakthrough by wearing clothes versus just relying on the muscles and stuff like that.
And so I'm just curious, because I guess the similarity from Terminator to White Lotus was that you were working on a project like James Cameron, who is one of the greatest directors of all time, has multiple blockbuster, multi-billion-dollar movies. You're in True Lies with him, Terminator. But for me, it was such a blessing to work with the writer, the director, the creator, the showrunner of White Lotus, because Mike does everything. And same with James Cameron, right? Mm-hmm. And
well, yeah, it's interesting you mentioned it because, look, I have always been a fanatic about working with great directors.
Right.
Because I feel like that when I look back at my career, I have to say I have to give credit to America, gave me the opportunity, and the great directors. Mm-hmm. Because, think about how lucky I was.
Yeah,
to work with
too.
Bob Rafelson in the 70s, Bob Rafelson, Hal Needham, John Milius. These were the greatest directors at that time, and even Robert Altman in a movie I did in 72, where I had no lines in it. And so then Jim Cameron and John McTiernan, Ivan Reitman and Paul Verhoeven, all great directors that helped me and moved me forward. And so you showed that also just now with Michael White. I mean, he is a fantastic director.
I know.
And a writer, just like Jim Cameron.
Yeah, exactly.
So they really know.
Yeah.
When they direct. They have a very clear vision.
Very clear. So opinionated. And so that was the thing with Mike that was like such a learning experience with me, because Mike is also an actor. So he has the acting background, which makes it a very unique work relationship where he writes it all and he's very opinionated of what you do, but then he also lets you bring your different, ideas to the character or stuff like that. But like I remember with you, with acting, you would always go and memorize your off book the whole script.
That's right.
Day one.
Yeah.
Right?
I studied the script and for a month.
Yeah.
And I have someone that reads the parts with me, and we rehearse and we do it's from bodybuilding.
Yeah.
From weightlifting. It's reps.
Right.
The more reps you do, the better you get.
Right.
It's that simple. So, and also it comes from the old school. Billy Wilder, was the old director from the 50s and 60s, he's an Austrian director that wrote and that directed. And he always said, he says, the actors would come to me and say, my interpretation, and he says, blah, 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 blah. I did not hire, let's get all the actors together. Guys, I didn't hire you to be interpreters. No,
wow.
I hired you to be actors. And I was hired to be the writer and the director. So here are the pages, not the whole script. Never give the whole script. He didn't want to have anyone come and say, well, my interpretation of this character.
Wow,
no.
So you had to just do everything
So the bottom line was, the old directors were fanatics about study your dialogue and hit the mark.
Yeah, wow.
Shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear interpretation. I don't want to hear your crap or anything like that. No. Just do the job. That's what I hire you for.
Wow.
And people like Jim Cameron is like that. I mean, I would go to Jim Cameron and I would say, I don't like the line, I'll be back. And he says, what do you mean you don't like the line? I say, well, it's just weird for a German to say, I'll be back. He said, why not I should say, I will be back.
And he said no.
And he said, well, he didn't say no. He says, well, as far as I know, I wrote the script. And he says, so are you correcting my writing?
Wow.
He says, oh, you're trying to tell me how to be a better writer because I'm not telling you when you do a scene to be a better actor.
Wow.
Or to change your acting. He says, so let's just say, I'll be back. If you want me to do 10 takes, different ways, because you feel insecure about it, we can do that. No problem at all. He says, but don't change my writing. And so it reminded me of Billy Wilder, because Billy Wilder would sit there and someone would be saying, he says, I went there, but there was no one there. And he would say, well, wait a minute. Do you see what it says? I was there, I went there. There's a comma. Guess why there's a comma? Because I wanted you to stop, give you a little pause, and then you continue on.
Wow.
That's the signal. So there was no interpretation, so he would tell them exactly to read the way it was written. And so I have kind of learned from that old school. Learn and study, so that when you get to the set, you don't even have to carry around the pages.
Yeah.
That was the idea. It's the old way of doing it.
I feel like it's so different. I mean, I don't know. I haven't worked, but like with a Mike White, like, yes, he writes it in a very specific way, but there's times where we would be mid-scene and he'll just yell out from behind the camera to change it up.
Yeah.
Or come up with new dialogue, or he just comes up with it on the spot, or we'll do a take and then he'll walk over and he'll be like, and then he scratches his head and he kind of goes like this. And then he redoes the whole scene. You watch him do the whole scene. He'll do everybody's dialogue, and he's doing it, and then he'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's what I want. I want you to try this. Change that. I want you to change this, and then you have to change it on the spot."
Right.
Which is a totally.
It has happened to me. As a matter of fact, just the last movie with Adam Shankman in The Man with the Bag, I was saying a line that was written. The camera was still rolling, and then he would just come over quickly. Try this.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
And then we tried that. And then he has a choice to use the first take or to use another take or whatever. So, you have to be ready for improvisation.
Yeah, Mike does
because there are changes. And I think it's good when the director is not too stuck on everything and just works with it. But I mean, what I'm interested in is it's just your approach to acting is obviously different than mine was. Because mine was I got to go no matter what it takes.
Right.
I got to go and get into movies, just like Steve Reeves and Reg Park. But you started studying it, which is a really surprise to me because when you were like 12 years old, I was always saying to your mother, I said, this kid is going to be a business genius.
Yeah.
Because with the age of 12, you already were like trading sports teams.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, of course.
And then I remember that your mother came home one time and she says, well, I'm renting this office, but they want $4 a square foot. And she says, $4 a square foot? I mean, this is 3,000 square feet, Mom. And I'm looking over at you and it's as if, how does he know about square feet all of a sudden? And then he said, $4 a square foot. Right. This is $12. I mean, this is a lot of money. And you should not really, you should think about it. You should find, that's when I said, oh man, this guy is going to become a business genius.
Yeah.
So that was always the thing. And then he went to business school and he always loved business. And now you're doing a lot of different businesses and you're investing your own money and all of this, which is really something that makes me very, very proud of. So the acting, I was always hoping, well, maybe he also likes to, like I did, to do both.
Yeah.
Be a businessman and also be an actor. And you did.
Yeah.
But the business thing was always the thing that I was like 100% sure you're going to be a very successful businessman.
Right. Well, you always told me growing up that business was so important to have, whether you wanted to go and be a, I don't know, you wanted to be a trainer, a gym owner, if you wanted to be a plumber, if you wanted to be an actor, whatever, having a business background. And you always said that you've made way more money from business than it was from acting and all your different investments and having kind of the business background. But yeah, I guess my acting background, I mean, you remember when I would do plays when I was younger, when I was a little kid.
Oh yeah, in school and everything. Yeah, absolutely. I remember Maria and I, we always went to all the plays and the rehearsals and everything that was going on there.
Yeah, the theater school and stuff.
That's right.
And then that was for audiences. And then for the past 12 years now or whatever, I've done theater school and classes, and you just put up a play every week, or 20-minute play or something like that. But you have an audience of 20 people. It's just the class, which is, which I love because I get to play characters that I would not ever necessarily get casted as, at least right now. I think the past 10 years, I mean, I've slowly worked my career. I've done smaller roles, and it's gotten bigger. And really, like, the staircase for me was like my mini break, I guess, for me, because it was the first time.
That was brilliant.
Thank you.
You played that so well.
It was and that was with Colin Firth and Juliette Binoche and Toni Collette and Michael Stuhlbarg. Everybody on that set was an Emmy-winning or Oscar-winning actor, which was and then it was me. And it was the biggest just learning experience for me. And it was the first time Antonio Campos, the director there, and HBO believed in me to do a very different dramatic role, which had a lot of impact on me getting Gen V and American Sports Story and then White Lotus eventually. I mean, it's interesting because you always say go for number one, right? You want to go big and stuff, and I've kind of gone the opposite way. But I also feel like the times have just changed so much since when you first...
Well, but I mean, look, I think you have to always shoot for the stars, and then you don't know how far you're going to go.
Right.
And so I just feel like whatever it is, I'm going to shoot for the top, but we don't know, really. I mean, I believe in it, and I'm sure that if you look deep down inside, you wouldn't mind becoming the greatest star of all times.
No, of course.
You're not going to put the brakes on that.
No, I know.
So there you are. So even though of course we have to take one step at a time.
Yeah.
They always say every marathon starts with the first step.
Yeah.
And yes, we have to do that. But I mean, the bottom line is, I just learned from bodybuilding.
Right.
That unless you go for Mr. Universe and Mr. Olympia, if I go for Mr. Austria, I'm not going to end up accidentally as Mr. Olympia.
Right.
So that's not going to happen. So to me, when I got into acting, it was kind of like when I came to America, it was like Clint Eastwood and Charles Bronson were the highest paid actors with $1 million a movie.
Right.
This was huge then. $1 million, but now people get 20 million or 25 million or whatever. There was $1 million then.
Yeah.
And to me, I said, I got to be part of that. Even though that ladder, to climb that ladder, it's going to be hard. I said, but I want to be part of that team.
Right.
I want to be part of making $1 million a movie. Of course, eventually when I made $1 million, this guy's making $5 million. And then by the time I made $5 million, this guy's made $10 million. So they were always ahead, but eventually I caught up with them.
Right.
But it's a fun goal to shoot for.
Right.
You know, because it gives you something to do. I learned it from bodybuilding. It worked in bodybuilding. And then I did it the same thing in acting. And even though everyone says, Arnold, it's never going to happen. Your name, Schnitzel, or whatever his name is, no one will remember, no one will be able to pronounce.
Yeah.
And then you're too big now
Right.
in the 70s. It's kind of Dustin Hoffman and Al Pacino, Woody Allen. Those are the big, stars today.
Yeah.
You know, they all kind of weigh 140 pounds and look at you, 250, like a monster.
Yeah.
And so forget the Hercules movies are out. So I was discouraged. No, it's impossible. Everything was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a clear vision of myself being up on top. That's all I cared about. And so I climbed that ladder slowly.
Okay, so that made me think of a question, because you just talked about making $20, $25, $30 million on a movie, but one of the movies you were paid the least for, from what you told me, was Twins, right? Which ended up
Paid nothing.
you got paid nothing. But I find that story so interesting, because it's the movie you ended up making probably the most money on. But Carrie Coon, who plays one of the girls in White Lotus, came up to me like a few weeks ago. She put her hand and she was like, honey, you gotta do a really different role next, because you're doing a really good job at playing a douchebag and an asshole, and people really believe it. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And she was like, so I think next thing you got to do something completely different. Because people come up to me saying, is Patrick Schwarzenegger like that on set? Is Patrick Schwarzenegger like this on set? And so I know with you got typecasted in doing one type of thing. And then nobody would cast you for a comedy, right?
Well, I mean, why would they?
Right, but you're an action star.
Yeah, they every time I said, or someone said, the studio executive, I would like to cast Schwarzenegger, and they said, in a comedy?
Right.
Are you crazy?
Right.
You know how much money we make with him as an action star? The more people that this guy kills on the screen, the more money we make. Why would we change that? Come on, for Christ's sake. And so that was the dialogue.
Right.
Until
Yeah.
Ivan Reitman came along and
Yeah.
Danny DeVito,
Yeah.
and they said, no, Arnold is funny.
Yeah.
I mean, we would like to do the movie Twins with him.
But nobody would make it.
Well, they didn't. So they said, why don't we do it this way? I said to Ivan Reitman, why don't we all three, we take no money, none. We all agreed, and we went to the studio and says, look, if we don't take any salaries,
Right.
we can shoot the movie with $16.5 million.
Wow.
So how much risk? We take the risk as well as you take the risk as the studio.
Mm-hmm.
All you really have to make is around $50, $60 million at the box office worldwide, and you have your money back.
Right.
They said, okay. And so we worked out a deal where we got 40% of the back end of the movie. And they said, okay, this way, we take the risk and you take the risk.
Right.
We all take the risk. And you have the larger ownership because you pay for it, you get 60%, we get 40%. And it happened to be the best deal that we've ever made, because the movie made over $250 million worldwide.
Right.
That's an equivalent of 500 or some million today,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, it's a huge amount of money.
Wow. And then you guys got 40% of that,
And we
of the
got
gross.
exactly. So, I mean, and we split it according to what our salaries were at that time.
Right.
And so everyone was smiling all the way to the bank. So this is... But I mean, that's what you have to do. You got to be creative about
I think it's one of the best moves that you did as an actor. And I guess the question I would have is, if you were in my shoes, what would be that swing for the fence? And it's different now. I couldn't probably go and say, I want 40% of the, whatever. But what would you say, like, what would allow audiences to perceive me in a completely different way like they did for you? Because then you went on and did multiple other comedies.
Yeah. I mean, I was at that point, was able then to do just about anything,
Whatever you wanted,
except Shakespeare or something like that, because they wouldn't buy into that.
Shakespeare would be
Except
great.
if I would show that I could do that,
Yeah.
then they would let me do that too. But I mean, I think we all get typecast.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things, because everyone knows there's certain things we can do really well,
Yeah.
certain things that the audience believes that you are that character.
Right,
So it doesn't help me at all to play the Terminator if the people don't buy in that I'm the Terminator.
Yeah.
Right? So therefore you have to really pull it off. And I think the people bought in that you are the character
Right.
that you played in White Lotus. And that is fantastic. That's the ultimate kind of compliment you can get when people say, oh, he was a scumbag.
Yeah.
Oh, what's made with Schwarzenegger or something like that. So now I think that just to do a really positive role
Yeah.
or a action role,
Yeah.
Because you have the physique, you're very muscular, and you always intentionally stayed lean, muscular, so that you can go and explode.
Yeah.
For a movie, if someone offers you some kind of an action movie, like Alan Ritchson, that was lean, and then all of a sudden,
Reacher,
he kind of like trained hard, and he gained the weight, and now he's totally believable in his character as being the Reacher and stuff like that. So you're ready for that anytime.
Right.
I mean, anyone that casts you for a character like that, you can go and within a half a year, you will be running around because you have, of course,
the genetics.
Genetics. The genetics. And you have the will also to succeed and all that stuff. But, the deals today are different.
Of course.
The forces are different today because remember that in the 70s, and in the 80s, it was the independent producers that were your savior.
Right.
So if you didn't get a job from a studio, then there were the independent production companies like Coralco.
Yeah.
They would do, Rambo, they would do with me Great Heat, and then Total Recall and all of those movies that the studio wouldn't want to make.
Right.
But those movies went through the roof.
Yeah.
And they made millions and millions at the box office, and it became the biggest hits, including like Terminator 2.
Right.
So the studios then eventually came and said, oh, we would like you to do a movie. How about Eraser? And how about, Batman and Robin? And how about, Sergeant Rock, which ended up never being made. But I mean, in any case.
No, I know. I
so
didn't
there
even
was-
know that. And then Luca, when I had my meeting with Luca, he said that you were signed on to that.
That's
He
right.
was telling me all about you and this role and everything. And then I came home and asked you about it. 'Cause
Yeah.
I didn't even know that you were going to play Sergeant Rock.
Oh, yeah, but there were several parts that I was supposed to play that never ended up being done because, A, I was having 2 movies a year and they couldn't do more than that. And B, then eventually in 2003, as you remember, I ran for governor and became governor,
forget? Yeah.
which of course you guys
Hated.
hated. I mean, it was the funniest thing that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It was you coming to me and says, what happened? Dad, we had so much fun going to the set and watching you blow things up and sitting in your movie trailer and in your motorhome and doing homework there with my friends.
Yeah.
And I loved watching your scenes. And now,
We go to the
what do you
Capitol.
want me to do? To go to the Capitol and watch a
Sacramento.
bunch of guys in suits?
I know.
And they take themselves so seriously? And all of you were rebelling.
I know. Amy Lou, who you just met backstage, Amy Lou came up. We did a conversation yesterday, and she asked me, she was like, where did you first get interested in acting? And I was like, it was heaven for a kid, for anybody pretty much, of going to a movie set with your dad. You would pick me up and take me out of school early all the time in your Hummer, throw me
They
in the
said,
back.
don't tell your mother.
Yeah,
Because your mother was in charge of education.
Yeah.
She picked the schools.
Yeah.
She picked the tutors.
Yeah.
She did everything, right? I
Right,
mean,
right.
she was like the hands-on, the strong leader at home. Yeah.
And you'd come pick me up early, and we would go, and you would walk in as Dad, you'd go into the trailer, come out as Mr. Freeze or Terminator, whatever, and you had the golf cart. And we would be in the trailer, and during your breaks, we could walk into craft services, get some red vines, and we would take the golf cart, and we would go to E.T. ride, Jurassic Park, and then over to Jaws, and we would get to go. And it was like, for a kid, it was just like heaven. It was you were on the actual lot. That's when everything was filming in LA, and you got to see the movie magic.
Right.
And that's like what I think opened my mind. I mean, I know we talked about this idea of the kind of the nepotism and all that in the beginning, but I think when you grow up and your parents do a specific job and you're open to it and you see it and you start to form a love with it, it makes sense that you go and
Right.
work in that world.
Yeah. But we divided it a little bit because I was asking you earlier what the approach to acting is because, as I said, mine was kind of like to just go in there and learn on the job.
Yeah.
You had a different approach. You went to acting class and you did your kind of plays in the school and all that stuff. But what is your approach today when you get a script and someone says, okay, you're going to star in this film or you're going to co-star in this
Right,
film.
right.
What is your approach from the beginning to the end so that you can pull it off really and be totally believable?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it depends on the project because it's changed. The process has changed so much for me over the course of my different projects. Like The Staircase, for example, I'm playing a real life person. And the director, Antonio Campos, was a huge believer in preparation. We were doing rehearsals as a group. I was doing physicality and body work with a guy in Israel that he set up. And so we were figuring out, how does the character move? How does he walk? How does he sit? All of the reactions based on this kind of animal work and body work. He also had me going to therapy and dream work as the character, which so my days were packed with different preparation work and activities to prepare for that role. And then voice, there was a lot of vocal work of trying to sound like the character that I was playing there, because he talked and he had this rhythm when he talked, and he talked like this, and he had the little bit of the lisp at the end, and it would be like that. So we had to work on that and the cadence, and that was very different than White Lotus, because Mike just kind of creates these characters. There is no true life story there that you have to respect. It's you building the character.
I recognize you.
Yeah, thanks.
Very cool.
And how do you do that? How do you build the character?
That
How do you
was,
work on that?
we spent a lot of time working with, as a family. So first off, it was a family dynamic. So we did tons of Zooms and stuff as a family before we got out there about building the backstory. We wanted to really understand as a family, what was the three kids dynamic? What ages were we playing? Who was living with who? Was I still back at home? When was school? What was the relationship like between us kids when we were growing up? We wanted to understand the relationship between us and the parents. We wanted to build the backstory of my character in journaling and really understanding who was this character from when he was younger, into high school, into college. How did he walk? That was one of the things Mike helped me with a lot. There was a famous quote of Mike when we did the first day of set, and I get out of the pool and I walk by Amy and I look at her, and he stops and he's like, "Patrick, aren't you rich in real life? You're not walking rich. You don't look like you're rich at all. Walk richer, walk richer." And I was like, "Okay, what do you mean walk richer?" He's like, "You're rich, aren't you? Walk rich." And I was like, "Okay." And so we worked on the walk and kind of this Conor McGregor style walk of the shoulders back and leading with the private parts and all of this stuff. So it was kind of like this amalgamation of like different stuff that we worked on. I found someone's laugh that I really loved, that I thought it was like this kind of like psychotic laugh. And I wanted to build stuff with the character that was like, he was very confident, boastful, and proud, but there was also something a little bit off about him and a little bit kind of creepy and weird. And Mike really likes to build that because he likes to have characters that the audience thinks, is this person the killer or will this person be killed? He wants anybody to be capable of doing that. And so he finds these different things that kind of help bring that out. But yeah, I really just start from what the writer's given me. I try to read the script multiple times, understand each character that I'm involved with, the who, what, where, when, and why is what we always start with in acting class and in acting school, and just build these real relationships with each individual character. And then I really rely on Mike.
Yeah.
I really rely on him to come in and kind of reel me back or let me go. And I was nervous the first days of filming because I didn't know like how loose Mike was. I didn't, like you had talked about with James Cameron, I didn't want to tell Mike I'm going to switch these lines, or I didn't want to tell him, I want to do this or this. And I remember one of the first days when I got out of the pool, the script read, Saxon walks out of the pool and goes to his lounge chair. And I did the take and I got out and I looked over at Chelsea in the lounge chair and I grabbed my penis and I tugged it like that. I went and I checked her out and I sat down and then I put my hand in my pants and kind of played with myself like that. And he came over and he was like, did you just adjust yourself? And I was like, yeah, is that okay? And he was like, it's brilliant, it's brilliant, it's brilliant, it's brilliant. It's so good, so Saxon. And there was another time I was sitting there at the breakfast table and it just has me sitting there, and I started doing the flexing of the pecs, which you always do.
Yeah.
And Mike was like, "Did you just flex your pecs?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, we got to get a camera on that. That is genius. That is genius." And he would do that. And so there was like times where he would let me play, and same with the scenes with me and my brother in the bedroom, and like having the idea of being naked as this kind of like, building this relationship between us and this power play. He really let me bring my own ideas to it.
Right.
And I think once you're there on set and you have the wardrobe on and you have the haircut and you have the vocals and the dialogue and you have the family built and you have an idea of who this character is, ideas start to just spring up.
And how did you develop that relationship with your brother on the show?
I honestly think that I spent every single day with Sam Nivola for 7 months straight. Like literally every day, except I came home, twice for 2 days or something like that. But we just tried to bond and spend as much time
It was so believable.
together.
Like your real brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's such a great actor and he's a great kid. I mean, he's 20, he was 20 there, 21 now. And we just tried to get as familiar as we can with each other and as a family. And we did, the 3 weeks leading up to actually filming, we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner together every single day. We went back to the villas and stayed together and did movie nights. We did everything to kind of create this family dynamic so that when we showed up to day one of filming, we had this kind of, at least this idea of who we all were with each other and how we all interacted.
So then what happened with Saxon and the Ant? And what happened to your dad?
That's a who knows, Mike? Well, maybe that'll come up in the next season. But I think with one of the things with Saxon,
Something must have happened.
In what
Give
way?
us a little. I mean, it's like we don't know. I've watched the last episode, and the boat is going, and everyone is on the boat, and then all of a sudden we see this close up of the waves down there, the white water, and I said to myself, did he just jump in, the father? Did he kill himself, or is he going home? Is he facing the consequences? What's going to happen to your character?
Yeah.
All of this stuff is like unanswered.
Yeah.
So I said to myself, well, here's the day, you're here, give us the scoop.
Well, I wish I had the scoop. You have to ask
Patrick.
Mike. I think
Come clean.
What I know is what Mike does really brilliantly is that he answers questions and he leaves questions unanswered.
Mm-hmm.
And same with characters. Certain characters evolve over the course of the show and other ones don't, or they leave more fucked up than they were on day one. And that was a big learning. Like for me, the end of episode 8, there's this scene where I'm coming down with the book and I see the girls and I sit on the lounge chair on the beach, and it's the scene where Amy goes and runs into Walton's arms, and I look over and I see her running and he just kind of focuses on me. But so the first time I come and I play that scene, because he doesn't really do rehearsals, I came and I did it and I played it this guy was very sweet and he had this full 360 moment. And he was telling them about how great the books were and everything. And Mike walks over right away and he's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I was like, well, I don't know. I thought I'd play it nice. I feel like this is a moment to the characters developed.
Right.
And this is a new him. And he was like, no. I don't want that. All I want is for you to say like, yeah, the book is fine. The sex stuff is fine. And then all I want to do is I'm going to put a camera right here. And I want you to turn and I want you to watch Amy run into Walton's arms and jump into her arms. And I'm just going to have a camera and I'm just going to watch you. And what I want you to deliver is that for the audience to think, maybe Saxon has changed. I wonder what his life is going to be like after this. That's what I want them to think. And I said, okay, sure. So we did the scene. I came over. I did it differently. Yeah. The book stuff was fine. The sex stuff was pretty interesting. And then she gets up and runs over and cut. Then does the same thing, puts the camera here. Okay, do it again. And I go, and I just did, and he just stuck the camera, and it was this 30, 45 seconds scene of the camera just right in my face. And we did it, and then he just yells, cut. And he was like, that's perfect.
It was perfect.
I guess, yeah. But you don't think, and then you see it in the final cut and it plays beautiful of like
fantastic,
the scene, but you never,
because I was wondering after, what did that mean? Why did he stay on his face for so long? there's something going down here.
Yeah, and Mike is.
So that's.
It was really like a beautiful moment of learning that it's like, you know, when you first start acting, you're always focused on the times when you have dialogue and you know, the active listening and stuff like that. And it's just, he does a really good job of kind of facial expressions, showing facial expressions and showing just very minor, you know, changes in the face that can convey a larger meaning.
Right.
And it was a really beautiful moment of like a learning experience for me as an actor and just trusting the director.
Right. The other thing that I wanted to ask you is because I was so impressed with you about the promotion tour
Oh, yeah.
that you did for White Lotus. The reason is because I was always a fanatic about promoting.
Yeah, you taught me that.
And communicating with the world, here's this product that I have. And I always feel like if they don't know, you have nothing.
Yeah.
You can have the best product in the world, but if they don't know, you have nothing.
Right.
And you started a promotion tour in Los Angeles, then you went to New York, then you went to Bangkok, then you went to France, and then you went to Italy and Spain. I said to myself, wow, I wonder if he learned something from me, or if this is also in his instincts, or it's a genetic thing that, you know, we got to go and sell this and all this stuff, because so many actors don't believe in that.
Right.
They grudgingly kind of like, and you know, they hate going on trips. And maybe you like to go to Cannes, to the film festival, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Right?
No, you told me that.
I just think it is so important to do that. So where did that come from? And would you recommend this to any actor? Because it was obviously very successful too.
Yeah, no, it's been game-changing for me. You were the one who taught me that. And then just a couple weeks ago, I remember I was telling you I went to Bangkok, I went to Australia, and you're the one who called me and said, well, where are you going to Germany? Are you going to Austria? And I said, no, I don't have time. There's no time to do that. And he was like, well, you said, aren't you in France for the day doing something? I said, yeah. And he goes, well, then pop to Germany for the day. Just do it for the day.
Right.
And so I was like, okay. And so I asked my publicist, I asked HBO, can we go and stop in Germany at least for the day and stuff like that? And I did, and it was huge because then you sent me these photos of the Zeitgang, the magazine covers of.
You occupied the space that week in Germany.
Right.
With all the political chaos and the craziness that's going on over there. And the left and the right and all this, but you occupied the space. So that's exactly what I wanted to accomplish, because I knew they needed something like that, something that is entertaining and the political and, you know, about all that. And it worked 100%.
Yeah, well, that was credit when credit's due.
Well, thank you.
You set me up for that question, didn't you?
Anyway, it was this was a great discussion.
I know. It's
great to talk to you. We talked about so many things that we normally really don't talk about, because you have never ever asked me about to call a director or to call a studio or to call an agent or to call anybody.
Right.
And you never ask me even for advice when it comes to acting itself or anything like that. So you're really, I mean, a rare breed, and I'm very, very proud of you.
Well, thank you.
It was a great discussion.
Thank you. I know. We could have kept going.
Great discussion for hours.
We could have kept going.
Exactly, yes.